Everyone, Mike Vogel here for WashingtonCaps.com, joined by Caps Assistant General Manager Ross Mahoney as the Caps get ready to take on the NHL Draft 2023 here in Nashville. Ross, there's a bunch of guys that you drafted who had quite a memorable experience last week in Coachella Valley, winning the Calder Cup. And how do you feel like that could benefit the organization and those players, those 7 or 8 players that we're talking about going forward?
Yeah, no, I think for the organization and for the players, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, one, you learn how to win. And I think sometimes when you haven't won, you play those big games that you hope you can win. Well, now they believe they can win because they are winners. They know the adversity that they went through. You know, they know that you're going to get good calls, some bad calls. You're going to hit posts that go in, hit posts that stay out. You're going to fight through injuries. But now they know what it takes in order to be a winner. And I don't care what level it's at, whether you're playing midget or junior or college or American Hockey League, East Coast League. I just think it's such a huge step in a player's development. And I think for our young guys, and we had 7 of them that played a lot in those games, and they got big minutes, which was really nice to see. It wasn't like they were playing 3 or 4 minutes a game. They were playing a regular shift. They were either on power play or penalty kill. So yeah, that experience is huge. It kind of reminds me too of back when we had, I think we had a run there where we had 3 Calder Cups in 6 years, and the Mike Greens came through, and the Neuwirths and the Carlsons and the Elsners, and so I see a lot of similarities between what happened then and I think what's going to happen here in the next couple of years after winning this cup.
Talking about the prospects themselves, how does that set them up confidence-wise, which you alluded to in the last answer, but opportunity-wise too, going into September's training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, there's going to be some opportunities for those players, obviously. But, it's up to them to come to camp. And you got a new coach, coaches, head coach, assistant coach. So for those younger guys, it's great. They won in Hershey. They won a Calder Cup, as we talked about, and that's great. But it's also up to them to come and, try to win a spot on the Capitals. Make it tough on those coaches to send you down.
When you look at a guy like Alexei Provorov and you see the physical abilities that he has, what does he need to do to take the step forward and maybe, to me, he looks like a guy who, if he could figure out how to just be a little bit more assertive with his size, that he could develop into a third-line center who could have a 700 or 800 game career in the league.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but I think he had to stop growing. We drafted him. He was probably 6'4" and a bit, and then he went back and he grew another inch, in Prince Albert. Then he grew another inch, and I mean, I remember being 5'10" when I was 17 years old, and I thought I was awkward. I can't imagine when you're 6'6" and you're 19 years old. I just think it's trying to catch up now to his body, and I think his skating has really improved as he's put on more weight, like good weight, and got stronger, and so I think he's got more leg strength, and so I think all those things are really starting to come together for him.
And for me, Beck Mountain was a guy who came up in a very brief period of time before he got hurt back last November 1st against Vegas. Looked like a guy who was ready to seize that 4th-line left wing spot and take hold of it for the rest of the season. I didn't see anything in the Calder Cup playoffs that made me think any different there.
No, I think Beck is he's turning into what we thought he would be. For us, we thought if it all worked out for Beck, he had a real good chance to be a bottom 6, forward who skates really well, that would bring energy, finishes checks, be hard to play against, take the puck to the net, and I think he's really developed into that. And I thought the playoffs that he had in Hershey, the opposition defense, they had to be aware when he was on the ice, both him and Riley Sutter, because they finished every check, and it's not fun to play against, So I think Beck has really bought into, what he needs to do in order to be an NHL player.
Let's talk about Riley for a little bit, because I thought he was excellent as well. Great face-off guy, really good size, right-handed centerman. Nick Dowd was a little bit of a late developer. Riley Sutter didn't get the opportunity to have a run like this until this year. And he had a couple of seasons that were impaired by injury, and like pretty much every guy on that team lost some valuable development time to to COVID. Are we seeing him kind of blooming? And can we expect to see some players really around the league kind of blooming maybe just a little bit later than they would have because of, things that were out of their control entirely?
Yeah, there was basically a couple seasons where those players didn't play, or they played in bubbles where they played 25 games. So I think we have to be a little more patient with some of them because they weren't playing 100 games a year. They weren't getting all that good practice time. And the nice thing for Riley was, as you know, he's had some injuries, and I think that was tough on him. Saw him in the summer in Calgary. He was there training. I think he said he had switched to where he was working out and who he was training with, and he looked a little leaner. And I thought, this is interesting. And I thought he had a really good year this year. And the playoff games that I saw, I mean, that's sort of the Riley Sutter that we drafted. As you said, big body, was winning faceoffs, really good on the penalty kill. Obviously chipped in with, a big goal in overtime in one of the games. But I was really happy for him, to basically be healthy this year. And it's hard to train. It's hard to get yourself in the gym and be on the ice skating when you've got these injuries. And I think, he lost time, obviously, with COVID and also with the injuries that he had. So really happy. I mean, he really looked like the guy that we drafted.
And Lucas Johansen, kind of a similar situation, also injuries, different drafted a little bit earlier, but is it a little bit of a similar situation? And Lucas still has a year left.
Yeah, no, I thought Lucas had a real good Calder Cup also. And he was a little bit by injuries the first 2 or 3 years there, which is unfortunate, but hey, injuries happen. Sometimes they come in bunches, sometimes they're a little more spread out, and I think it's even harder when you're younger because you're so anxious and ready to go and you want to make a good impression, and then you train hard and then you get an injury, and I think sometimes you have to really battle through that, not just physically with injuries, but you have to battle through it also mentally, So, but good on Lucas. I thought he had a really good year.
Vinny Iorio and Hendrix Lapierre are rookies in the AHL this year. And what do you see as the next step, next level in their developments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they have this experience of, as we talked about earlier, going 4 rounds in the playoffs and winning a cup, and they both played important roles. I mean, Vinny was out there, last 2 minutes of a game, and I'm like, hey, 20-year-old defenseman, that's the coaching staff obviously had a lot of confidence in him, and Hendricks was contributing offensively, but I think there's a lot of credit have to be given to 2 different groups. One, the coaches and and Hershey. I mean, I thought they did a fantastic job, whether it was the head coach, or our 2 assistants as far as developing these guys, positional players, and then our development team, I think, is pretty special, with Brooks Orpik and Jim Slater-Ole, Kolzig, and then, being led by Steve Richmond. Steve's in charge of that, and I think I would put that coaching group and I would put that development team up against anybody's in the league. And I mean, look at it. I mean, Calder Cup champs, 7 kids that played a lot that are young, and so I think that's a real kind of testament to how good those 2 different groups are.